It's the fastest you've ever seen someone fail a marriage. Literally minutes. I was invited to a wedding. It was an absolutely beautiful event. Everyone in the wedding party looked as if they had stepped out of a magazine photo shoot. The groomsmen were all impeccably dressed and the bridesmaids all looked divine. The bride's beautiful white gown was gorgeously fitted and ended in a cascade of beautiful lace that was just to die for. Everything was perfectly planned. The bride and groom exchanged their vows and literally, within seconds of the "I now pronounce you man and wife," the door to the chapel flew open with a loud, explosive thud. It was so unexpected and startling that everyone turned to see what was happening. A woman walked through the door. She had wild eyes the likes of which I had never seen before. They were big, bulging, red and fixated on the bride and groom. It was as if we weren't even there. Her eyes were laser-focused straight ahead. It was obvious that her eyes were red because she had been crying. Everyone looked at each other absolutely bewildered about why the woman would open the door so emphatically and why she looked like a wild animal ready to attack. The bride looked confused like the rest of us, but the groom had a look of panic and terror. Before anyone could really say anything, she took off running down the aisle. Some of us stood up with worried expressions as we wondered what was about to happen, but no one intervened to stop this woman. She got up to the steps where the bridal party was standing and flew up them like she was possessed. As she bounded up the steps, with a speed that almost seemed like she was flying, the next thing we saw was the groom crumble to the floor as the loudest, hardest hit I think I have ever seen in my life was leveled against the side of his jaw. The preacher jumped back and the bride was absolutely frozen. Everyone let out a collective gasp in unison. As the groom dropped, this woman landed on his side and began to punch him like her life depended on it. After what seemed like eternity, but really was only minutes or maybe even seconds, 3 of the groomsmen jumped in to pull her off of the groom. She wasn't budging. She wrapped her legs around this guy and clung to him like she was a second skin. I literally had never seen anything like that before in my life. It took 6 men to pull this 5 feet 4 inches woman off of the groom. When the woman was finally pried off of his bloody body and could be contained, we started to learn all about who she was. At this point, the groomsmen had her pinned and she was crying and screaming, with her tears and yells echoing through that church like a morning bell. She was yelling and screaming and asking how he could do this to her. The bride composed herself and asked the woman if she could talk to her. The woman started to calm down and the guys let her up, but kept a firm grip in case she decided to attack the bride. They sat her on a church pew and the story started to come out. She was pregnant. She had been involved with the groom for the past year. Keep in mind that the bride had been involved with him for the past 3 years. She didn't know anything about the bride and the bride knew nothing about her. The groom, however, knew a lot about both of them because he had been seeing both ladies. He told the woman that he was going to be gone overseas for work for about 3 weeks. The truth was, however, that he wasn't really going anywhere for work and was, instead, getting married and then going on the honeymoon. He had done a great job of keeping this woman in the dark, but he made the fatal mistake of paying for a driver and car using a credit card account that the woman had access to. She saw the charge on the card and called the company to find out what it was for. She discovered that it was for a car and driver to take the groom and bride from the church to the reception. She managed to get the address of the church from the car company and that is how she found him. She was 4 months pregnant. He had been staying with this woman regularly, even though he had his own place, as he and the bride did not live together and didn't stay together every night. The groom, who had been taken to a back room, came out as this woman was telling her story. He walked over and tried to yell at the woman and say she shouldn't be there, but he was already too late. We were all so shocked and upset about what was happening that no one interrupted him as he was yelling at this woman, but as he continued to yell, something snapped in the bride. Before anyone could prevent it or really even see it coming, the bride pulled back and punched him on the side of his face opposite the side the other woman had originally hit. Her punch wasn't as hard as the first woman, but it was still a good one. Everyone jumped between the two to keep her from attacking him again. Then, her family pulled the groom out of the church to talk to him. The woman apologized to the bride for destroying the wedding, but the bride hugged her and thanked her for coming. She told the woman that she would have never known what was happening if it wasn't for her. The rest of the evening was actually pretty great. The bride decided to go ahead and have the reception because it was paid for. The woman came and was comforted by everyone. Turns out some members of his family knew about her. Needless to say, the bride was very upset. Everyone went to the venue and had a good time talking about the events and marveling over what we had just witnessed. The only bad part was that the woman had been too late to prevent the wedding. Legally, the bride and groom were married. The bride was able to get the marriage annulled and she dumped the guy and they never made up. The other woman didn't get back with him either, although she did have the child and they did end up co-parenting. The marriage didn't even last for the whole wedding. The bride ended up finding out about more women he had been seeing once news of what happened started spreading. One day after this was over, I asked him how he thought he was going to get away with that deception. He said, "I was actually just going to wing it and see how things went. I had a 50-50 shot that no one would find out and I thought those were pretty good odds."